Yes, please.
But is this to help the people that are? Okay. Is there a way to game it so we don't have to hold it? All right. Can people hear me? Okay. Where's the camera for this, though? That? Okay. I may not, apologies to you in advance in the inside of this screen here, because I may not stay within this rectangle. If I don't remember to twist the camera around, which I won't, just trust me, I'm still have you in my hearts. Okay? So, I don't have any PowerPoint slides, and there's kind of a reason for this. It's because the topic is uncertainty, and one of my aims when I was thinking about, how should I present my ideas about uncertainty today is that there would be a contradiction between my medium and my message if I was certain about my ideas about uncertainty. And so as I was preparing for this lecture, I was presented with a paradox. On the one hand, I obviously want to do a really good job because you are all wasting your time for half an hour listening to me this morning. Very charitably, very kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. But, so on the one hand, I want to prepare, and I have prepared extensively. But on the other hand, I don't want to rely on what I've prepared, because then I am just running through a routine, and then I'm not actually touching the space of uncertainty, which I think is important for us as teachers and as researchers. So I've tried to navigate this creative tension between structuring this presentation and then just going freewheeling improvisation, trying to just be in the moment, responding to you all, responding to my thoughts as they emerge, and to see how that tension plays out. So obviously, whenever there's a creative tension, and any of you that know me know that I love talking about creative tensions. This is another creative tension, right? Between structure and freedom. So, all right, I'll just go with that. I'll just go with it. So we have structure and freedom, and they seem like they're opposites. But on their own, one of them is very sterile without the other, right? If I presented this in a way that was completely structured, I would be a robot. That would be boring. It would be wooden. It would just, and you would quickly get bored, right? However, if I was just doing this totally chaotically, just rambling, stream of consciousness, dream-like images that are just conjuring up in the great flow of the evolving universe, you would also get extremely bored, right? So it's easy to say that good work, good teaching, good research happens when this contradiction marries together. That's easy to say, but the reality is how do you actually do that without one side stepping on the toes of the other in some sort of way, which actually, instead of symbiotically leading to something that's greater than the sum of its parts, actually competes with one another and leads to just further ruin and decay for my presentation and boredom and tediousness for you as listeners. So that was the challenge I was coming to. And as I was thinking about how to, about how I would approach talking to you today about this creative tension, I realized that in my teaching as well, and in my research, some similar issues come up, and I expect that you will be also facing these as researchers. And so I wanted to kind of bring out some of the thoughts that I had while I was thinking about it. Does that sound like an okay idea? for me to talk about some of that stuff? All right, okay. This is not flat Coke. She was suggesting this was flat Coke. It's not, it's coffee, I promise you. I would never drink Coke or flat Coke.
It still looks like Scotch.
Yeah, it looks like Guinness, doesn't it? But anyway, I probably don't need coffee at this stage. You're all pumping me up enough. I got enough adrenaline here, so I'll just keep easy with that. Okay, so if I am going to approach this with an acceptance of uncertainty, then in part, you know, there's a lot of emotions that come with that, right? So it's scary, first of all, because there is the very real risk that I could screw it all up and bore you and, you know, just say something that's completely incoherent and be disrespectful to you because you've spent a lot of time trying to, you know, coming here today and listening to me, and you're still, I can see most of you are still trying to follow me. So like, you're all very kind people. But nevertheless, it's still scary, right? So there's an urge to want to provide a structure. So there's something I'm learning. This desire for certainty is actually psychological more than anything else. It's like, it comes from a place of feeling insecure, of feeling like, of worrying about a future where you don't know where it's going to go. And then instead of providing the space for novelty to emerge, you know, if there's ever going to be a new idea coming out of my thoughts right now, it will only be because I've opened up a space for its possibility, right? Whereas if I just stick with what is stable and what, you know, I reliably and confidently think is true, I'm just going to be repeating the old. So as researchers, I think you are in the business of trying to come up with something new as well. So to the extent in which you rely on the safe ways of thinking and negotiating, navigating, analyzing, thinking, questioning, to the extent that you rely on the safe approaches, that may be an impediment to your capacity to move into the novelty that you need in order to grow with your research question. Yeah, but you have on the other hand, you have very good reasons for being kind of skeptical, because too much chaos can, you know, you only have 3 years to complete this. You know, afterwards you want to get a job. You don't want to do something that's totally crazy. You don't want a stream of consciousness PhD dissertation. It would be ridiculous. So you're dealing with a version of this same thing, right? And I think it's not assisted by the fact that there's too many experts in the room. You've got your PhD supervisors that have their opinions. You've got all these, you know, fancy people that you're citing in your journal articles, and all of these people are kind of telling you, trust us. Don't shut up and listen to yourself. I think that that's a problem because, well, if you look at, I don't know, I'm just gonna cite a couple people that I think are probably quoted by some of you. So I know that one person in the room likes to read Confucius. And I know probably somebody here likes to read Foucault, I'm guessing. Maybe Foucault's out now, I don't know. But so these guys, and you know, there's millions of others, you read their stuff, it's like, it's so rich with insight. There's like idea after idea after idea after idea. Like, where's that stuff coming from? Like, we might think, I don't know, they were somehow carefully observing the world and recording what they saw. But to just observe the world and record what you see is just ends up leading to a dreary, long, tedious description. It doesn't provide insight. Okay, there was a guy in a green t-shirt with his like face, with his, you know, there's a person beside him with his mask down under his chin, like the ash tree was swaying gently in the breeze that was coming from the north. Like, I could just keep going on and on. It would be absolutely boring for you. It wouldn't lead to any insight, right? So the insight is not coming from just faithfully paying attention, although paying attention is obviously a key part of research. I think it comes from facing the unknown in some way. if Confucius or Foucault, they had their favorite theory and they're just like, hey, this works for everything. I'm just going to apply this to interpret the wind and interpret the guy with the green t-shirt and interpret this, interpret that. They're not learning anymore. They're not growing. They're not rich. There's no more insights bubbling forth in them. It's just, you quickly get the sense of this person's a one-trick pony. They got one way of analyzing, and they just keep going through that over and over and over again. That's not what they're doing. Yeah? The people that are the most inspiring are constantly pouring forth new possibilities. How do they do that? I think it's because they have a capacity to face the unknownness without that fear, without the fear of what could go wrong, and just be with it for a little bit. What's the unknown I'm facing right now? How do I deal with this next moment in my presentation after reaching that point? Can I learn from Confucius and Foucault in this way? In my own experience, when I'm wrestling with an idea, I find the first thing I'll tend to do is to think of it in ways which are safe. I'll analyze it in comfortable ways that I'm used to doing. It's kind of a cheap win in that way, yeah? Yeah, I can come up with an interpretation. But am I leading to insight, or am I just deepening habit? I'm not saying habits are necessarily bad, right? We need habits to live. So my habit is, if situation A, interpret it as a case of B. There, done. But if we didn't do that, this is the structure we're talking about in the structure and chaos thing, right? If I never did that, I would just be treating every instance, every encounter completely new, as if I'd never seen it before. I would never be able to navigate in the world. The world does have patterns and structures and regularities, and our ability to form habits in response to that is a condition for us being able to navigate the world and not die. It's good that we have habits. And so part of knowledge, part of gaining knowledge is to form these habits. That's a good thing. But it's a double-edged sword, yeah? Because each time I use the habit, I solidify it potentially, right? So for example, I think, oh, this is a case of A, do B. This is a case of A, do B. Look, this is another case of A, do B. Stephen's induction problem, okay? So each time I do this, I reinforce a groove in my neurons and a groove in my body and a groove in my mind and a groove in my heart, a habit of responding in a certain way. I become a little bit more like a machine. I don't pay attention to how that actual instance actually may be different from the other A's that were in its category. I just treat it like an algorithm. But in reality, although things are related and can be categorized, they're also different from one another. There are no two things that are the same. And it might feel safe to go, oh yeah, this is a case of A. Boom, done. If I look again, if I look fresh with new eyes at A, at this situation, maybe it's not exactly like A. Just like there's no two snowflakes that are the same, there's no two anything that's the same in the world. Yeah? So then we're faced with the unknown. And then when that unknown opens up, that's the moment where you can see, hey, what's new here? So I think, to me, it was this suspension of the tendency to categorize, this willingness to be in a space of uncertainty that allows the creative people to keep flowing forth their novelty. Because your ability to do that is then now suddenly you're opening up a space for this individual being to present something new that isn't just another opportunity for you to throw your habit onto the world and ignore what's different about it. So, as I said before, you're faced with a dilemma here because you're all researchers. And if what I'm saying is true, the best researchers are not the ones which just settle on some habits that work and just run those out to the clock ends and they die. It's going to be the people that have an ability to pay attention to when those habits aren't working and to see what is actually more than just that habit, what else is in that moment, and then they can grow. That's how theory evolves. That's how new observations come about, yeah? So I think that this is true for like all kinds of research. It isn't just true for philosophy or art or anything like that. It's even true for quantitative, right? For quantitative research, you still have the question of how am I going to analyze the data? How am I interpreting this? What is my research question? What is my new research context? All of these questions still involve the opportunity to try out something new or to do another version of what you think is the same thing, okay? Most of you are going to be teachers as well at some point in your life, hopefully, if you get a job in academia. Teaching, we have the exact same problem in pedagogy. So when I enter into a classroom, the better I get at teaching, to a certain extent, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this is this kind of situation, person's asking this kind of question, I know how to answer, boom, 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 I'm so hot, I'm amazing, it's like that, right? And things are going well for a while, right? You feel like you're on top of your game until at some point you realize I'm starting to mechanize this whole thing. I'm not seeing these people, I'm not seeing these situations for what they are, fresh. So really, research and teaching can be kind of thought of the same thing. And there's maybe you can think of it as there's moments or cycles in the process. There's a moment for growing and developing more certainty, more of a habit. There's a moment for pulling away and trying to see something fresh again. Okay, so I don't think, I'm going to give a pause for a moment here. My question here is, how do we do this? Okay, this is where I'm going to go. This is where my mind is finding myself going next. How do we do this? It's easy to say we need to keep open this space for uncertainty. How do we do it? Okay, so one thing I have noticed from paying attention to myself and my own practice is this keeping yourself open to the unknown. How do I phrase this? You gave up on me, didn't you? Don't worry, I'll do it on my own now. It's not very kind of me to demand this labor of you. Anyways. At least in Western countries, we tend to think that consciousness is capable of a lot of amazing feats. It's the grand thing that distinguishes us allegedly from some other creatures. If you believe that, I don't. I think that consciousness is pervasive across the biological world. But anyways, at least our form of consciousness, this self-reflective consciousness, this I am conscious of being conscious. And that's what's so amazing about me. We think that at least that kind of self-reflective consciousness is something that's unique about humans. It gives us kind of this this rupture in creation where we are the thing we're the universe aware of itself, and how amazing is that? So we tend to think that all of our problems can be solved with consciousness in a way. We think that it has the power to do anything, and maybe it has we can will forth this novelty with our consciousness, this novelty, this unknownness that we're seeking. I don't think it works like that. From my experience, it's not like that at all, actually. From my experience, if I am willing a new thought, it does not come. However, if I'm not willing anything, thoughts come. I'm not going to bore you right now, but if I just if I just said, okay, everyone, we're turning off the lights, we're all shutting up for like 3 minutes, don't have any thoughts, don't think. Okay, that's the instructions, that's a game. What's gonna happen? Like, you're not gonna last very long before a thought comes up. Yeah? So, and not only that, you're not gonna have any control over what that thought is. A thought is gonna come up. Okay? Consciousness does not originate thoughts. Consciousness like tracks thoughts that emerge. But like to think that we are the will, like we bring forth the thought with our consciousness is like, that's another question. Like there's not really a lot of evidence to do that. And the more you sit and pay attention, do some proper phenomenology of what's happening in your mind, the more you realize it's like, it's not really that simple. Like, and the more you, and in a way, the more you shut up and listen, the more thoughts emerge. Some of these thoughts might be irrelevant to your research, but some of them might be relevant in ways that you are not like necessarily, like that you weren't expecting. Why does this happen? And why is this hard? Is this like the IT corner of the room? It's like, it's a weird distribution. Like it is. You guys are, okay, I was wondering. I was like, am I just like really boring for 3 people that happen to be together? Or are you guys doing something? Okay, just, all right. Anyway, diversion. So why does this happen, right? This is my question. And what's preventing it? Well, I can tell you what's preventing it. We have this cult of productivity that's constantly giving us the message, if you're just sitting around, you're doing nothing. And you need to be active. You need to be working. You need to be writing or reading or reading or writing or writing or reading. One of those two you need to be doing. So it's like, it's less of an importance of like where this idea is coming from that I'm writing or how new it is or how important it is than I'm writing, I'm getting something done. There's more words on a screen. I'm closer to the end of my dissertation. Yeah. And, or, you know, my supervisor, I have to meet them in a week. I have to have some shit, then I have to give them to read. Otherwise, like, all that stuff. So there's there's another pressure, right? There's another fear of facing unknownness that gets in the way of us engaging productively with the source of our own creativity. Takes a risk to trust, to shut up and listen. Why does it work? That's the other side of it. That's my second question. Why does it work? So I think it works because, well, I don't know why it works exactly. I do know it works, but if I have a theory on this, it has something to do with the fact that the body is an organ that's continuously evaluating, interpreting, summing, averaging, calculating in some way meaning. And that when thoughts come into consciousness, it's because there's some sort of a translation process where some of the interpretations and evaluations that are happening in our body arise into a form that we can then look at and consider, you know? It transforms into language. There's a translation into language that happens. But there's the thoughts that break through that barrier and come into language. But then there's also, what about all of the other half-formed thoughts and thoughts that are in the process of emerging in our body and in our felt moving world, right? Like, it shouldn't be a surprise that this is the case, by the way. Like if I threw a ball at you right now, you'd probably be able to catch it. If not catch it, then you'd at least like put your hand roughly to where the ball should be and then fumble and it drops. But like to do that, right? If you think to do that, like there's some pretty serious mathematics going on there, right? It's actually, it's calculus, right? Because your body is somehow tracking the rate of change of a ball subject to gravity over time and space, right? And But if your conscious mind was trying to do that, it would be a totally different affair, right? So we know that our bodies are already doing all this complex master work, and only some of it comes up. So we're not, to use Gregory Bateson's term, we're not the captain of the vessel. That's not what consciousness is. It's something else. And I just think in research methods, they never talk about this other side. In philosophy of science, there was this big debate in the 20th century between the context of discovery and the context of justification. So you have like people like Karl Popper and those guys. They're all talking about how, actually how ideas arise is a mystery. It's a mystery. But, we can't talk about that. We can just talk about once they arise, what we can do about them to evaluate whether or not they're good ideas. But, I just think in teaching and in research, the arising of the ideas is also a key part of it. And we need to attend to that explicitly if we're going to continue doing good work. Otherwise, we're eventually just going to end up cogs in a habit machine, which is, I think, what's kind of happening in the world right now. So, how am I doing for time?
5 minutes.
All right. I haven't given you a title for the talk yet. I was hoping that maybe we or I could decide the title based on where this talk is evolving, in keeping with the idea that I trust uncertainty as part of the process. There's one thing that's just coming to mind here, right? Is that I've been spending a lot of time talking about, if we want to know, there's a better way to do it, which is to trust unknown, or trust the silence, to be silent before the silence and to let ideas come forth. But I guess there's another question to ask as well, and it's like, why do we want to know stuff anyways? Like, why are you doing a PhD? Some of us think we want to know in order to do good in the world. But like, how do you know that the knowledge that you're going to produce is even doing good in the world? Like, that's a lot of the, like, if I use the example of me catching the ball, it could be that once we turn something into explicit knowledge, we make it clunky and awkward and like not coordinated with the world anymore, So just like if I was actually trying to do calculus consciously in order to catch the ball, I wouldn't be able to do it as well as if I just trust that part of me knows, maybe not the conscious part of me, but part of me knows. So there is a real dilemma. And I'm not, like, obviously I'm an academic. I'm not saying that we should just put up our hands and like go for, ignorant mysticism or something like that. I think there's a role for knowledge, but I don't think it's obvious what it is. And I think if we don't think about why we're trying to know in the first place, we could lead to some dangers. And part of me fears, I'm gonna kind of move towards an ending here. I feel an ending coming forth because I'm hearing a quote in my mind by Friedrich Nietzsche. And he says, let me just try to remember this. Okay, he says, we no longer believe that truth is truth once the veil is withdrawn. We've lived too much to believe this. Today, we view it as a case of basic dignity that we do not require everything to reveal itself in all its nakedness. That we be present for everything. That we know everything, that we understand everything. Decency, nakedness, what is he talking about? Is our quest to know everything in academia like just part of like a general pornographication of the world? Like, why do we have to reveal all these truths explicitly to consciousness? Why do we want to burn the mist off of the mountain? If the mountain is revealed in all its explicit detail, do we know it more? Or do we actually lose something of the truth of that mountain? okay? So you may think you're doing good, but like, maybe we gotta slow down and think about, is this knowing stuff just this process of disenchanting our relationship with the world, where actually maybe just like in a good relationship with another human being, you know, once you think you know that person, the relationship dies in a way that there's a back and forth between between the intimacy of knowing somebody and then the surprise of them coming forth in a new way, that there's always new mist on the mountain. And we may, for me, what that would imply is that the role of research should be double-edged. It shouldn't just be about revealing truths with the eventual goal of what? Knowing everything? How boring would that be, right? But it should equally be in the process of like destroying truths and opening up new question marks. And I hope, like my hope for this is that the universe is set up so that we can just do that infinitely. Like any new knowledge leads to a new question mark, and so on and so forth, so that there's this ever progressing, you know, movement between revelation and mystery, and new revelation and mystery. I hope that's the case. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know if any of you know. It could be the case that we just reach a point where, like, actually now we've just basically found out everything cool that there is to know. And the whole universe now is just basically like, you know, your childhood home that you're bored of and you just can't wait to get out of, but there's nowhere else to go. So why are you doing your PhD? And if this is the case, what's the role of uncertainty? Do you need to do your knowledge slower? Do you need to linger and cherish and make slower this movement of this opening forth, of this movement between the uncertain and the certain? What do you need to do to protect the mist on the mountain? That's what I'll call this talk, the mist on the mountain. Thank you.
Okay, big thank you to Dr. Affifi. So now we have a Q&A. So we'll start in this room before we go to the online audience. So does anyone have a question they would like to pose?
I do. What was that talk about?
We'll go to you second.
Me. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. It's really a different talk I have ever seen. I really thank you. Really appreciate it. It's not a flat, it's a truth for me. And I have a question for you. As you said, when we dealing with the uncertainty, risk-taking is a thing. So my question is, how do you dealing with the risk-taking when you're doing a research? Thank you.
So, I mean, there's moments when I can get into that zone and I do feel like I'm channeling not like creativity, novelty. It's just coming forth and I'm super excited. Not that I am the creator of these thoughts, but that I can be part of the creation of these ideas. And, you know, those are the moments I live for. When I'm in the zone, when I'm in the flow, and it's just like boom, 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 boom. But then there's other points where I hate my tendency to do that, because it's like I have dozens of papers that are 90% finished and they'll never get done. They won't get done. The rate at which unpublished papers is growing in my file box is like exponentially higher than the rate at which I'm publishing. And it's getting worse over time. So there's parts when I hate myself as well. So I feel like I'm still trying to navigate and figure that out. And I go through phases where sometimes I strike a balance that works better, but then the situation changes a bit and that balance doesn't work anymore. And I just don't think that I don't think there's any certain solution to the problem of certainty and uncertainty. It's maybe a praxis, a phronesis, a skill, a wisdom that I'm eventually developing through, or hopefully I'm eventually developing, but I don't know. And I guess to me, it's a matter of trust and having people around me that remind me as well, like community, when I'm hating on myself, that I'm not being productive, and I'm just like, that there's some people that are like, okay, relax, this is part of the process. Remember what you told me a few months ago? This is a good phase that you're in, this is part of it. I'm like, oh yes, that's true. Myself 2 months ago, yeah, they had a point.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ramsey, for your talk. And you should know that our time wasn't wasted at all. It was really engaging. But what I wanted to ask you, you said trusting uncertainty and keeping your mind open. When did it come to you? Like, when did you realize that we need to trust uncertainty? And considering that all these PhD students are at different levels of their PhD journey, and is there any process or is there anything that they should be looking for the time that will come so they will learn to trust uncertainty or keep their mind open? Can you say something about it?
Yeah.
How did it happen?
Thanks, Sabina. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if the answer I'm going to give is true or if it's just a story I'm telling. But I feel like it's like, even if it's a story, it's partially true because it's resonating with me in a way. So I feel like we're attracted to our topics not just because it's like we think it's good for the world. There's something that we don't fully understand that attracts us to our topic. And if we trusted that better, we could engage with our topic in a playful way, like a child engages lovingly with what the child's absorbed in. And those are the moments when the flow happens, right? When your conscious self and all your worries and stuff disappear, and you're just delighting to be in your topic. Okay. So I got my topics that are like that, for sure. I also have all of these things which get in the way of me thriving in that space. And my role as a human is to balance those tensions towards some sort of creative process. There's probably many factors in my life that have allowed me to see this clearly. So one thing I feel for me personally was when I was doing my PhD, I had all of these like doctoral advisors and stuff, and they're all like, oh, you got to publish or perish. And even if you publish, you'll still perish because there's so many people publishing, and like, you got to play the game and this and that. And like, you know, every job that you apply for, there's going to be 200 people applying, and like, it's only one person that gets it. And so, you know, there's this stuff terrifies you. Like, who wants to play after that? And I believe with Carl Jung that we play with what we love. We love what we play with. Like, it's like, I don't mean play as in like a player, you know, hey baby, not like that kind of a player, but like play, like real play. Like the play that you play with your child. So when I was a PhD student, both of my parents died. One after the other in like maybe a 1.5 year difference, right? So these people that were telling me all this stuff about the world being like, you know, the scene being all like blood and tooth and nails and all that kind of stuff, and like, and it's doomed, and academia is not what it was, and all that stuff. It's like, none of that mattered, because to me, like, the whole thing put it in this focus for me of like, hey, I'm like part of the 1% of the world or less that has an opportunity to go deep into something that I care about. It's like, I don't know what's happening in the world. Like, there's, you know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know, you know, and so like, I guess in the same way that my parents taught me to cherish the moments that I had remaining with them as I was caring for them as they were dying, I also learned at the same time to cherish the moments that I have in my research, because they're going to die too. They're going to be gone. And if I just spend all my time like, worrying about this and that, I'm not being present for that moment. It's the same. It would be equivalent to like not sitting down and being there with my parents or something at that moment of their lives. And then I realized afterwards, hey, if it really is 1 in 200 people get the job, there's no benefit in being number 5 or number 7. Like, you can play the game as hard as you want. Somebody else is going to play it slightly better. Arguably, with those odds, 1 in 200, the better thing to do is just be yourself. And then you go to an interview and then somebody's like, this person's different than the rest of the people. Like, maybe I want to spend some more time with this person. There's something interesting, there's something different. I don't know if that works or not, but I don't think it's less likely to work than to play the game and come number 10th or number 12th. And at least you get to have some fun along the way and figure out who you are, what you care about. And even if you don't get into academia in the end, you'll be clearer about what you want through the fact that you've allowed yourself to engage deeply in things that you care about. Boom.
Okay, a big round of applause for Ramsey.
You people are so kind. I really appreciate it.
I was surprised how much your talk sounded like Jordan Peterson. I wasn't expecting that from you. This order chaos idea was quite prevalent.
Okay.
I was not expecting that.
Okay, Jordan Peterson. We're not going to get into Jordan Peterson right now, but he didn't invent the order chaos dichotomy, right? This is as long as it's in Taoism, it's in Christianity, it's in all of those religions, it's in ancient Greece. He's just riffing off of some old stuff, and he may repeat some wise insights that the elders have said without himself birthing them, and still say a lot of silly things along the way.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Okay, so we're moving on to PhD presentations.